I don't think. All right. Good deal. Um, Guadalupe is here with me. Guadalupe is the Mel instructional consultant from Kansas City. She led this session this morning. She's at the doctor's office with her kid. She's going to try to help out when she can, but I'll more or less lead it. So Guadalupe, you're welcome to join, but if you have to jump off or
You.
something, no.
Well, we'll start. Thank you everyone for being here. And like Rep mentioned, we have our session six to start with, and this one talks about classroom interaction, a conversation that is more structured. So we'll go ahead and get started on it. We're going to review first, of course. And our main objective for today is I can create a plan to implement the strategies from the 7 steps to a language-rich interactive classroom in my school. So how can we make it more interactive? That's our main goal for today. Hopefully we can give you the right steps and the structure that you need to do that. And we have an exit ticket. So my next steps to implement language-rich strategy is blank, and we'll fill that at the end. And I know we talked about the chart, and hopefully I remember in the morning somebody mentioned that they have them and they have seen them in the classroom, which is how can we make the students talk or answer when they don't know? So many times we ask our questions and students will reply, I don't know. And sorry, this will be an overview of sessions 1 through 5. So many times we'll say, oh, I don't know, and that's the easy answer that we'll get. But we want to make sure that we implement more conversation to our students to make sure that they don't give us just, I don't know. And like we can see on the chart, may I please have some more information? Can I talk to my neighbor or student next to me? Can I ask a friend for help? Or where can I find more information? So little tips like that that we can guide our students instead of just getting the answer of I don't know. Just build on the language habits, how we can acquire more helpful information and our expectations. And the other one that I love is says students for random substitution. And I'm sorry if I'm saying it not correctly, but how can we randomize ask our students so that they don't expect the same student that's always going to give the answer, but at the same time that their effective filter is not so high that they always have to talk.
I'm going to go over steps 2, 3, and 4 here. So as Guadalupe was saying, step 1 is making our poster and teaching our students what to say if they don't know what to say. Steps 2, we're encouraging our students to speak in complete sentences. Um, Oftentimes we're doing this with a sentence starter or a sentence frame. Um, Step 3 is, as Guadalupe was saying, is randomizing and rotating when we're calling on students. And step 4 is using a response signal, a total response signal. There's a bunch of different ones of these. So we talked about sometimes you might use something like a whiteboard slate, where you ask a question, they kind of record an answer, and then maybe show that to you or show that to a peer. We talked about maybe ranking things or doing kind of fist to five as far as agreeing with a statement or disagreeing. Um, and then sort of the one we really wanted to see implemented as soon as possible is starting to do the ready signal. So mostly building in wait time, building kind of starting the expectation that we don't always raise our hand to answer a question. Instead, the teacher asks a question. We want a little bit of think time. We want students to show us a signal when they think they've thought about it and they're ready to respond. And at that point, we either would do a randomization or let them talk to a peer. Um, I think we're going to really get into sort of this sentence starters and sentence frames today when we're talking about structured conversations and how we want to be intentional about our sentence starters and sentence frames. So we're really having students use specific academic vocabulary words or using vocabulary in context as they respond to questions in class. Um, so again, real quick, steps 1 through 4, we're making that poster. We're teaching our students what to say if they don't know what to say. We're encouraging complete sentence responses. We're not always calling on the same students, but having some sort of system for randomization, and then trying to also build in a either a ready response or having other ways that kids are kind of doing a total response signal to maximize engagement. As Guadalupe and I were talking, we talked a little bit about how this might look different in different grade levels. And we've done class visits, so we've kind of seen it happen in different grade levels. Um, and I kind of was hoping that you all maybe you want to share in the chat, maybe you want to unmute. Um, but I was going to kind of pose a question to you all about how have you maybe tweaked any of these to be more appropriate for your particular students. So, for example, if I have students who don't read independently yet, am I using a sentence starter or a sentence frame? Um, and how is that sentence starter, sentence frame maybe different? So, are there some more supports? Am I including some visuals with my sentence starter? Am I using maybe a more simple, straightforward sentence than a complex sentence? Um, I kind of just want to hear how have you done this, and is has there been any kind of adjustment depending on the age of your students? Um, and love to hear that in the chat, but also feel free to unmute.
Hi, Rob. Hey, so I was
Hi,
thinking,
Angie.
how are you?
Well, first, Angie, first, before you talk,
Uh-oh.
everyone needs to know that you were quoted in the newspaper recently.
Ay, ay, ay.
Sorry.
No,
Go ahead, Angie.
you're
Tell us.
good. So one thing I was thinking about is how when we give students sentence stems or when I give kids stems, I try to tier it so that they have an option because we have some friends who are a little more shy, still in the silent period, and so maybe it's it's harder, and and so I want to give them options. So if they want to use more language versus something more simple, there might be two options or three options, and so then I'll say, you want to try one, two, or three, and so they'll say, and so giving them some autonomy and some options. Of course, after doing a few, like, let's do it together, I say, you say, let's do it together. Okay, now I want to go around. Which of these would you like to do? Do you want to try one, two, or three? And so that's one way to get everyone to participate, but also to feel successful using the STEM that's most appropriate for them.
I love that. So, just to kind of summarize what she said. So, first of all, Andy works in a school full of newcomers. So, it's the International Welcome Center at Rittner. So she's going to have kids at very early levels of proficiency, some kids who are picking up on English a little bit quicker. So giving them different choices as far as, yeah, we want a complete sentence response, but you might say it as easily as this, or maybe as complex as this. And so kind of letting them have a choice as far as how they respond. Um, and I think maybe even in the book, kind of they've talked about like if it's even the newcomer kind of repeating the sentence with you, right? So maybe, the first step is can you repeat that with me and then giving them a choice or something like that. So accommodating as needed for kids of earlier proficiency. Thanks for sharing out there.
And we have some
Cami,
in
we have anything in the chat or
the,
Guadalupe,
yes,
anything
we
in the
have some
chat?
in the chat. So like they were saying they like the option, the tier option. And they also have used accountable talk visuals, and they even share a picture of the accountable talk. And I think it's very
Yeah.
similar to what Angelica was saying of it breaks it down into different options of what sentence they can use or pick one out of so many. So that's pretty good. Simple sentences, repeating of the same visuals, and repeated use of same sentences framed daily. So the repetition that we go
Awesome.
back and forth. So that's pretty good.
Cool. I think this morning we talked about with the teaching kids what to say when they don't know what to say, you might include like a gesture with it. So it might be like, I need more time to think, or I need help finding the answer, or it might be like, I want to talk with a partner. So kind of if you're, especially kids who are really new to English, like we want to teach them these phrases, but we want them to know what they're communicating. So you might think about, do I need to pair a gesture with that to ensure they're understanding what they're asking for? Um, cool, great sharing out. Thanks for participating in that. All right,
And I think the next one is
Guadalupe, tell us about
five, the
visuals.
visual. And like you used the word mentioning, Rob, when we have them complete the sentences, but they don't know. So having the visual in there will, sorry, give us a better understanding of what they want to say and they want to point out to things. So many times we think within the high school, the middle school, we don't need the visual, but the newcomers, regardless of the grade level they come in, the visual is always helpful to see where they are or what they want to say and just point at it. I'm sorry. So with the point and talk, like we were mentioning earlier in the morning, if there's something that they cannot say, they just cannot where to point, and they're communicating what they want to say just by pointing at it and if they see what it is. I love when I walk into the classroom and everything is labeled. So the door, and it has it sometimes in many more, not just the English, but it has it in more different languages, so they know that's what it is and they point at it. So that's great. And I also like the scanning part. And with the scanning, I just learned this morning, and in the book, it says you start from the end or the bottom to the top. And I always, when I used to scan, and it was just, let me just go through it and I look for the words that are similar to the Spanish because it's my first language. But no, it's actually going from the bottom to top and scanning, and that will prevent from the students actually reading the text. So, and I tried it after this meeting. I was like, I'm gonna go and do the scanning activity myself. So you scan from the bottom to top, and in your mind, you set it to something that you're looking for instead of just scanning for words, and it does work. I don't know if you guys have used any of them, but they're pretty good. And so, when we talk about new vocabulary, having the visual instead of just having them translate the word, because sometimes it doesn't translate to the right word that we want them to. So having the visual is probably a safe to go than translating in the first language. If you go into, let's just say Google Doc or Google Translate and translate a word in Spanish, we have people that speak Spanish from different regions. And I'm going to tell you, people from Puerto Rico want to understand the same. People from Ecuador want to understand the same. So that translation portion not always works. So the visual, I feel like, is more effective on my side than translating into the first language. And those are great. I don't know if you guys, I think we're ready to move on to the discussion, Rob. And I think we have a couple
Yeah,
questions for the visuals on the next
yeah,
slide.
yeah.
I'm gonna-
So we're gonna ask you in a second about your teaching of vocabulary. Again, talking about using visuals, sometimes offering a translation, but I think what Guadalupe was trying to say was uh, at a certain point, it maybe is faster to connect it with an image than to always be translating. So if you're translating, you're taking this extra step of from my new language to my first language, and then what does that mean? And if we're just teaching a word in English with a visual, maybe it's that direct connection there. The point and talk strategy, just to revisit that, is essentially you're thinking about your lesson. You're thinking about what are like the four words that I'm going to be saying all the time during this lesson. I'm going to make sure I have a visual for each of those four words posted somewhere in my room. And then as I'm delivering instruction, when I'm saying numerator, I'm pointing at the numerator. And every time I'm saying adding, I'm pointing at whatever. So, like, that was a bad example, but you get it. Basically, I want to be providing comprehensible input. I want kids to be able to pick out what are these individual words the teacher's saying. What does that mean again? Oh yeah, that top number. He keeps saying numerator and he's pointing to that top number. Um, so I was kind of saying, I keep saying this morning. This morning we had a book study, so that's what we keep saying is this morning we did this session. This morning I was just kind of talking about without visuals and when you're just relying on audio input, um, if you're not understanding, you're going to give up pretty quickly and not be tuned in. And so, this idea of the point and talk of every time I'm saying certain words, I'm touching a picture and reminding my class about what does this mean. You're giving that kid sort of an entry point to jump back in and be like, oh, yes, this is what we're talking about, or I'm not completely lost. So, point and talk. And then the other strategy that Guadalupe was talking about was scanning, where we kind of look from the bottom of a text to the top, just trying to pick out words that we're not understanding and then the teacher is going to provide a definition for those, hopefully a handful of words or so that were picked out. I've never tried the scanning strategy before. It was a new strategy for me, so I'm curious to hear if any of you have tried that. Um, so I am gonna advance. I put it in the chat also. I think I shared this before, but I like this website flaticon.com. I've been using all their little, they're kind of clip arty images or icons, and I put them in my presentations and stuff. But if you're wanting to add some more visuals to a slide deck or something like that, or even a worksheet, you might check out flaticon.com. Um, I'm gonna again kind of ask you to either put in the chat or unmute yourself. How's teaching vocabulary going? Like you can say, I've already been doing a lot of these things and I'm gonna keep doing them because I hear they're good in the book. Or maybe I've been doing it a certain way and I've started to add this particular piece because of something we've read in the book. So I'll be quiet for a second and let anyone want to share out about how they're teaching vocabulary or how they've made any changes to that.
Using cognates, and remember, we're good at the waiting time. That's why we practice. So we will wait until you guys are ready to talk. Jessica just shared on the chat. The past few years, I have been using more of the whole brain teaching style in my classroom. So we use gestures, songs, poems, rhymes to learn new vocabulary. Then there is an opportunity where students teach their partner what they just mimic from me. Oh, that's pretty good. And we'll talk something about teaching other students in a minute too. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, those are great things. So yeah, using music, using chants, using gestures, and then opportunities for kids to talk to other kids or to teach other kids. Uh, Thanks, Jessica. And cognates, Angie's on it with the cognates. I'm always blown away by the stat that like, especially for Spanish speakers, something like 30% of English words have a Spanish cognate. So a third of the words we say have a similar sounding word in Spanish. So, and it's like especially true for academic words. Um, um,
One really nice thing about using the visuals is more and more of our classrooms are getting very diverse language groups. And so we have more than just our Spanish speakers. We could have 3 or 4 languages in the classroom. And using those images gets everyone on the same page at the same time, kind of. So they all have something to refer to rather than having to try to translate for every language. So that's helpful as well.
yeah, definitely. I like the idea of like whatever image I'm using to teach vocabulary, I want to use that same image if it's going to be like a support on a worksheet or something later. So kind of trying to keep them consistent. Um, all right. We got one more chat thing. Hang on. Not all students are literate in their first language. Yeah. So providing a cognate doesn't always work. If they're not literate in their first language, that wouldn't work. Sometimes hearing it, they might have heard it before. So even if you type it in Google Translate and you type like the speaker button where it pronounces it for you, it might be that the student's like, oh, I have heard that word before. Jacomara is saying she's using point and talk often. Very quick and efficient way to remind students of the meaning, but to continue speaking and teaching. Right. So keeping it going, but just kind of making sure they're getting that extra layer of comprehensible input and kind of getting their engagement back. Even letting the kids come up with some of the image themselves. I like that. Thank you. All right. Guadalupe, I'm gonna have you start off
Yes,
us off
we'll start
telling us about
with
step
step
six.
6, then is the and I'm gonna start with this phrase we got from the book on page 73, asking students to talk with each other using a specific language about a clearly defined topic. So the way that I see is many times we ask students to talk about this topic and we do it in different many ways. Like I know one that we tend to do a lot is think, pair, and chair, or stand up, pair up, and I can't remember the last one. But this one, it's more of a structure. So we're having a main objective. We want to get to a point, and we want to get to it structurally. So there's a structure to get to it, not just get to it. So we want to do specifically with the talk, using a specific language. So which means we give them the sentence theme, the vocabulary we want them to use, and they clearly define the topic. And that will be more of where we ask them to clarify the topic within a small groups, and then we can bring it out to all together. So this is more of, to me, it's more like an eye opener that I feel like we all as teachers are doing it in the classroom, but this one, it gives us more of a structure of how to do it. And what, ready on the next one, Rob? I want to get to the conclusion of where is the Q triple SA. So it's, and again, when we talked about this morning, it was just the huge chat opener that Rob mentioned. This all step 1 through 5th are guiding us to get to this Q triple SA. And it's called Q triple SA because Q 3S is an A. So when I first read about Q triple SA, I was like, what is Q triple SA? Thinking in my head, what is that? How did that even spells? But it's the acronym words for question, signal, steam, chair, and assessed. So this can be used as a formative, not summative assessment. This strategy allows teachers to assess response and check students' understanding so that we make sure that we are telling them the right content, that they are understanding what we are teaching them, and that they feel safe and secure and ready to learn in many different areas and many different subjects. So when we start with the question, we give them a question, and this can be in any area: science, math, social studies, ELA. We give them a signal. We ask them, once we give them the question, we ask them to provide a signal. So when we give them the question, we don't want them to give us and throw us an answer. So it's a process. We give you the question, and I want you to think about the answer. Don't throw it out the answer yet. Just think about it. Let us sit down. Read the question more than once and think about it. And the signal will be, once you're ready to talk about it, we'll ask you to do this. Either stand up, either raise your hand, put the pencil down, any signal that will guide you to where there to know when the student is ready. In the STEAM, we provide the sentence stem. And if you remember in other sessions, in the previous sessions, I believe it's 2 or 3, we talked about sentence stem, providing a sentence stem for the student. So we're already going back to the question where we provide you kind of the answer, but you're filling in the blank based on the question we provided. And then we go into chair. So we're just not, again, telling you to throw the answer of the question when many times students, they didn't know right away and they just want to give you the answer. We want you to stop, think, and process the question, read the sentence that we wanted to fill in, and then you're going to share with somebody, and this sometimes can be in smaller groups or pairs. And then we move on to the last one, which is assessed, and we informally assess. When we have them discussing groups, then we bring them in together, and they will share what they talk about in the smaller groups. And so we didn't, I personally didn't came into the conclusion that steps 1 through 5th are giving us the structure of each one of this to come to the conclusion of Q triple SA and how effective this strategy is for all students K through 12. And we'll give you more of what would a question look like, and it's just simple samples. What will you solve the problem? What surprised you the most from this reading? So simple general questions, and then you ask them for a signal. Can we stand up, thumbs up? And we talked about signals last time. Thumbs up for if you're ready. STEM, we provide the sentence, and we also talk about different ways to provide sentence stems at different grade levels. And then we'll have them share. And again, the last part will be to assess the students, and this will be informal. And we have one activity that we want to do with you guys to see if we can put it together.
We're gonna have you do a Q triple SA. So first, I'm gonna confess that I jumped the gun and I made you guys do a Q triple SA like last session, I think. And honestly, in general, I mean, I don't know how much you care about my personal learning, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. I learned about the Q triple SA strategy from like Seidlitz Consultants. Seidlitz is the group that made the book you guys were studying. And I kind of liked it. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but the more I kind of tried it out and things. I liked it, and so I started to work it into some of my workshops in PD. But I hadn't ever read Seven Steps to a Language Rich Classroom, and so, like Guadalupe is saying, as I read the book, it's like, oh, they're really breaking down each one of these steps and why it's important. So, what's the research behind it? Why does this have an impact with our students? And so, yeah, really kind of steps 1 through 4, especially, are building up into what's called the QSSA strategy. And just to kind of, again, to sort of repeat Guadalupe, you're posing a question to the class. I thought something interesting to me in the book was, I don't know, it's not hugely important, but to me it was always, I pose a question to the class. I just have them think about it and give me a signal when they're ready to respond, and then I'm going to them to use a complete sentence. But another way, kind of how it's outlined in the book, actually, is asking a question and then kind of talking about when you think you can finish this sentence. So they're actually introducing that sentence starter second. So it's almost like the question, and then here's our sentence stem. When you think you can finish this, give me that thumbs up or give me your arms crossed or whatever the signal is. And and so once you're seeing the signal, then we're having students have an opportunity to collaborate, rehearse with a peer. So using that complete sentence, and hopefully also adjusting the answer, right? So also kind of saying, as you listen to your partner, if they finish that sentence differently than you did, and you like the words they used or you like the point they were making, this is an opportunity for you to adjust your answer. And then our last letter of A being assess, where typically it's a randomization. You could potentially assess through writing. So if you're going to have them write out their response with the sentence starter, it could be that today my assess is I'm going to collect all your sentences. Or I think more frequently, probably we're going to do a randomization. In the book, they also talk about like a numbered heads assess. So it could be that form groups and we'll have each group sort of share out their best response or something like that. Anyway, step 6 really is about this strategy, QSSA, which, as Guadalupe and I both kind of said, is really incorporating all of steps 1 through 4 into one strategy. We're going to do it, I think, like mostly, I'm just going to keep talking because I just talk too much, but this is what I do. So I think like it could be very structured, kind of like where we're doing this sort of thing where we have like the picture and we're showing them the question and then the signal. So you could do it very formally where the kids are aware of each section of the process, or it could be kind of more of a natural thing where it's just every time I'm questioning in class, my students know we don't raise our hands, and it's just like, hey, I want you to think back. What was one of the main causes of the Revolutionary War? And when you feel like you've got it, you give me a thumbs up. And it's like, all right, now let's think of how we could phrase that in a complete sentence. It might sound something like this. And then, all right, let's go ahead and tell your partner real quick, practice that with them, and then let's hear from a peer. So if you want to make it kind of clear that we're going through each of these steps with your students, go for it. If you want to make it more of a kind of like, this is just my procedure and it's more of a natural thing where you just kind of flow through this, that's also great. But again, to use language from the book, you're trying to push kids away from sort of, it's just the kid. The only time I have to talk in class is if I raise my hand, I get called on, to multiple times during class, I have to think of the answer, I have to share with a partner, and then potentially I'm going to be called on to share out whole group. And so we're kind of pushing them into this being more engaged and verbally sharing their thinking about things more often in a class period. All right. So just to kind of go back to where we were, they're talking about something called a structured conversation, which is QSSA, but mostly, again, to repeat Guadalupe, like we're saying, oftentimes in a class, we're doing a turn and talk. Like, look, I don't know, there's levels to this. There's some teachers that like, they're not even having kids do turn and talk, right? So I think like at the bare minimum, let's get some turn and talk where we have a couple occasions where we're trying to share with a partner what we're learning about. But if you have done turn and talk and you feel like my kids are not on task and they talk about other things, or some of them don't say anything at all to their peers. That's where structured conversation comes in. So that's saying, hey, it's not just turn and tell your partner. It's, hey, you've thought about this. I'm giving you the support of how your answer is going to sound. Let's read it together. Now you're going to tell your partner, let's go. And then, okay, let's hear someone share out. So there's a little bit of an accountability piece there too, where I hope you're rehearsing with your partner because we are going to have some people share out. So we're being really clear about. I don't want you to just say anything to your partner. I want you to kind of put your answer into a complete sentence with these types of words, and then of course we're going to have an opportunity for a whole class share out. So our QSSA we're going to do right now is I want you to just kind of think about the student interaction that happens in your classroom, and how is what you're doing in your classroom the same or different than what the book would describe as a structured conversation. So, like, for example, kind of going off what I just said, you might think, oh, sometimes I do a turn and talk, but kids might kind of answer using any type of language and not necessarily specific language. Or maybe you're like, hey, I've been really diving into this, and what's happening in my room looks a lot like this already. Or you might think like, hey, I haven't done much student interaction at all because my kids get wild and out of control and I can't get them to be quiet after they start talking or something. So be honest, but kind of I want you to think about when student interaction is happening in your class, how much is it similar or different to what would be called a structured conversation? Um, all right. So when you think you know what you might share about, we're going to put you in a breakout room in a second to share with a partner. But I want you to either, you can do like the virtual hand raise, which I think is under like your reactions button, or you could just type ready in the chat, but that'll be our signal that you've thought about it. All right. Got a hand up. I got 3 readies.
We're ready is coming in, so I think we're ready.
All right, good. Cami, in a second, but not yet. I'm gonna have you make breakout rooms, and I would say make like 10 or 11 breakout rooms, kind of randomly. Um, and but first, let me show you guys what our STEM is. So when you're in your breakout room, I'm gonna encourage you to use a complete sentence. So it might sound something like this. Student interaction in my classroom is similar to a structured conversation because I try to use academic vocabulary in my sentence starters or something like that, right? Or I've been using QSSA already. Or you could say student interaction in my classroom is different than structured conversation because I'm allowing more social English and not pushing for academic English as much. And I I'm I mean, to be totally honest, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think it's just something to be aware of and to think about, do I need to target more academic English yet or not? Um, anyway, point is, please use a complete sentence when you're sharing with your partner if you can. And if you want to use our sentence starter, that could be a good support for you. Cami, are you able to send us to breakout rooms? All right, everybody understand what's going to happen. You're going to go to a breakout room. We're only going to leave you there for like 2 minutes, maybe. And we just want you to share with a partner what structured conversation, what does student interaction look like in your classroom? All right, Cami. All right.
This time didn't send me to a breakout room. Do I pick one?
You are unassigned because you're a
I
Okay,
didn't put you
candidate.
in one, but you can visit one if you
that's
want.
totally fine. I'm used to just going to the breakout room. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm
Do you
gonna
want?
visit. I'm gonna visit this one. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be back. Give us another minute or so.
Okay. Everything going okay?
We did it. All right. Cammy, we're gonna do an assessment here, and we're gonna have someone share out whole group. Uh, but if you are nervous about this, don't be, because I'd love for you to tell me that you might need to talk to your partner again, or you might need some more time to think, or maybe you want me to repeat what we're discussing and what the
I
question
talk with Riley.
was.
She's a third floor.
Got her. So Cammy, we're gonna have someone share a whole group. Maybe give me a random pick somebody.
Okay, just a second. I'm going to go to the first person on the top of my next screen. The first
Okay.
person is um, Fleming.
Miss Fleming,
Uh-huh.
you could share with us something you said or something your partner said.
So my partner, golly, I missed her first name, but she's from an area near Francis House School District, and she is an ESL teacher who does a lot of small group work. And I don't actually have a classroom. I am a principal of an early childhood center in the Kansas City, Missouri area, and two of the teachers in our center are here. And I get to think about a lot of the things they do when we're here because they do a lot of neat things that are really related to this, but we never would follow this full script. But we both talked about how her small group and our early childhood center, often the target is more just some authentic communication and vocabulary growth, but there are times when we use sentence starters.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks for sharing that out, Miss Fleming. Um, Whenever I'm in like a, I mean, I imagine I would do this as a teacher, but when I'm in a workshop or something, and I do one of those, I do a randomization and someone shares. I'm always like, everyone give them a round of applause. They shared out. So yeah, letting reinforcing. If you got chosen and you shared out, it doesn't matter. We love that you shared out. Awesome. So yeah, definitely in a early childhood setting, you would have to make little tweaks to this particular procedure. But just to kind of revisit that, using that sentence starter or sentence stem, one of the reasons we're trying to do this is it's what I call message abundancy. I don't know if that's exactly the word, but mostly like I want kids to be hearing these terms over and over and over again, right? So just partial answers. If they're just telling me, oh, 56 or whatever, or I would add them, I'm like, no, I want you to just tell me the way I would solve this problem would be to da 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 da, and like, give us the full context and use some of those words, because the more we're hearing these words, the more we're going to recognize them later on in the unit, and really kind of internalize those things. So really pushing for it, I think is a good strategy. Thanks again, Miss Fleming, for sharing that. So that's QSSA. If you haven't given it a shot yet, give it a shot. These slides are available on the Wakelet. And so if you want to use my sort of template and kind of make yours look like this and add it to a slide deck you use, that's an easy way to start doing that. I think if you're not sure when you would use it, exit ticket is great. I mean, exit ticket as far as like, what's one thing we learned today about whatever we've been studying, right? So one thing we learned about, you know, I don't know. I'm terrible at examples. I can never think, whatever you guys are about. So, but it's a good kind of summarizing the learning. What's one takeaway from today's lesson on da da da. So, all righty.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Guadalupe, tell us about wit.
So going further in, we talked about how this book is going with step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, giving us a little summary of what the actual sex is, and then moving forward, we feel like the QSSA is the big picture of it, is a big activity, the big eye opener, the big strategy to use mainly in the classroom. And once we get to it, if we have students that are not able to or not willing to or feel afraid of giving you answers or talking in the classroom, then we have the WIT questioning that goes more into deeper conversations. So why do you think? Is there another way to say that? Tell me more about it. And I'm going to be honest with you, this time, when I saw Mary, she didn't heard, was in her small group. So I seen Leah in her classroom. And I picture her saying, tell me more about it when she's in the smaller groups and we're talking about early childhood, that they're wanting to know or participate or say something. And just simply, we're talking about early childhood. They just simply ask, tell me more about it. And they go in, and the kids just love to have that conversation. And they're little ones, and they are not reading yet. They don't have the visual, but the whole conversation, and they will give it to you. And then we move on to the high school. It's easier for them to just go in on and on and on with conversation. So if you're struggling with students that are not willing to participate, they don't feel like talking, or they just give you one word answer, you elaborate on the question to make it a conversation. And then this one goes on to an open close questions. So if it comes to the Robert thing is ready for the next slide. The questions that you go and say, tell me more about it, what is this? Then we go to the open and on the end questions. So I know it's like, who is this? Why are we talking about this? And so you can see in the pictures that why it's not. So when we have the open-ended questions, where is the, how can we do this? What is it? When is it going to be? So you start elaborating more on those questions to bring that conversation, to make them talk more, to just grasp on their brains because they have it in there, but many times it's just hard for them to express themselves and say something. And so if you notice, all of these activities are going back again to just rephrasing the assessments of them talking more than just sitting and not saying a word. And then we move on to I think it's and on the expert and the novice.
Yeah,
Yes.
hey Guadalupe, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Go
So
ahead.
mostly I just want to say my understanding of how the book's kind of laid out is the QSSA is kind of like first step is like let's shift instruction to this sort of passive, I only talk if I decided to raise my hand and got called on, to hey, we're all at any time you need to be thinking about the answer to this question and ready to share that with a friend and using a complete sentence and maybe verbalizing that in front of your whole class. So really kind of pushing kids from this sort of, and language from the book here, from a passive sort of learning environment to more engaged and expectation of conversation. So once you've kind of gotten QSSA going, where kids are like, hey, in this class, I have to share out occasionally and I have to share in a complete sentence. And this class is about language output and sharing my understanding of the content. Once you got that, then these next strategies are kind of like, how do we get into even more of a discussion? So how do we even go beyond sharing one sentence about what we're understanding to tell me more about that, or how does that work, or why did you think that, or what's another way to do that? Or in this particular strategy, kind of starting to take perspectives of how would an expert do it, or how would a novice do it, or viewing it from different viewpoints. So knowing that, like, don't jump right into this strategy if you haven't first done QSSA. I would say first try to get kids used to QSSA, and then once sort of this expectation of conversation in the classroom is going, then trying to get some of these other strategies going, maybe. Sorry, Guadalupe.
No,
Go
you're
ahead.
fine. I feel like with this one, once we get them, us as the ELL experts or students with a QAAA and get them going, we're getting them ready for other classes. Like I can see them being using science and math, like science for instance, the expert novice, when they have them read more context, more complex text within the books, have them practice that, and then when they come in and do the expert and novice, the student reads the passage, becomes an expert, and then the next, when you pair them together, the A or the B, the other student will read the second passage to become an expert, and then they share what they read. And so they become more knowledgeable and they share and they're more willing to talk. And it's more or less of an intimidation of an activity to do. But if you do the QSSA first, when they come into the classroom and the other science or social studies or economics, the bigger classes, they will feel more comfortable doing that. And this will be one of the things that you can even share with your other teachers that are not ELL, some structure or scaffolding activities that they can do with their ELL students.
One thing about this too is the teacher needs to model. So even though this is part of this format, you might say, "Oh, I was just listening to what you said, and that made me think about something I know. I think I can add that to this conversation." And modeling that for the students lets them be prepared when you do introduce wit because they've heard you do it and they kind of understand the process because you've shown them how it works.
Yes. And if you're thinking of how am I going to do this, one thing that I like about this book, and I don't know if you guys have tried yet, it gives you little boxes where you can like take a picture, scan them, and see a video of them doing this activity with the students. And it gives you a little feedback of how effective it is and what grade level should you be using it and so on and so forth. So it's a great extra resource to just have. Um, I don't know if it's open right now, but I had a link where Caroselva has a Padlet just full of resources of this book. I don't know if we have shared before, Cami, but it
Yes,
has.
it's in the very first session. There's a
Okay,
link to that, I believe.
awesome. So yeah, I used some of them and I like watching them. And on our next one, it talks about the sorry, the T chart. And here, I feel like all teachers have used the T chart before, where you can compare two things. So many times we have used the Venn diagram where there's comparing two things and in the middle what's a similar. And here's many topics that it goes over with like social studies, science, language art, math, and art. In the T chart, you can see how it's, and I'm going to go back with early childhood where we do the word bank, sentence stems and frames, pair students with the same viewpoint of practice. And again, this will be more of students that they can talk, cover conversation, that they have more of higher vocabulary. But again, we have those kids that don't have the vocabulary yet, and we can use the visuals. Rob, do you want to go into the next one where I showed the visual for the like, early childhood when they talk about pick a topic that they will become familiar as with healthy and not healthy. And this is a T chart. So where one column is the healthy and the other column is the unhealthy. And you have kids pick where it goes everywhere. So you talk about the healthy first and you talk about the unhealthy first. You have the visuals and the kids can participate on putting the visuals where they think they go. And then talk about if that's the right side that they should go or if it's the wrong side. So this will be open a discussion for all kids, not just the early childhood, but K through 12.
Um, One point I want to make about this one, the T chart pair defend. We're starting to get into argumentative discussion, or uh, taking a position on something and trying to provide evidence to support your position. And in our English language development standards, we have things called key language uses. So we're talking about what are you using language to do? Are you using language just to communicate a story or a personal experience, like narrate? Are you using a language to inform and just give information or to explain how or why something's happening? Or one of the key language uses argue. So basically, are you able to take a position and use evidence and explain evidence? And so this particular strategy is saying there's two different positions here. Let's talk about what are the different pros or cons to each of these two positions, and then assigning partners to take a position and they could use information straight from the T-chart as they try to argue their point. So in the image here, we're saying a podcast should be regulated because some are spreading misinformation, right? So I could just use it from there, or students might use that sentence starter and come up with their own information. But really, starting to get kids used to how do I use language to persuade my audience or to provide evidence to support a claim I have, which is increasingly important as we get into the older grades. Cam,
And
do you
I've
have something?
seen this being used with newcomers. I mean, you don't have to wait until the students have their language and the claim evidence response, which is very similar. I've seen high school students that are new to the language making a claim, then giving evidence, and then giving a response just because they know the format and they know what's expected. And we've given them the language and sentence frames as well. So you don't have to wait until they have control of the language. You can do it right away.
All right, great. I think one last strategy here, Guadalupe.
Yes, the perspective choice. And on this one, it talks about more of, again, the having the kids pick, like you mentioned earlier, Rob, it is the kids that will have more of a conversation of pick and choose. And so in here, when I pick a topic of science, and just because I feel like those are the harder ones where kids struggle the most, especially the newcomers, they pick a topic and they broke down into 4 different groups. So we have the pro-GMA science, the environmental activist, the farmer, and the consumer. So what it does is it breaks the student picks each topic that they're going to defend themselves in, become more knowledgeable, look for more resources, and then they come in to the rest of the class and defend their point. Why is the consumer better than the farmer? And then try to convince the other students to come into the group. So this is something where the kid, or you pick a topic that the students will be interested on selecting or reading more about. It will be into small groups, conversation, discussion, and then provide sentence stems for them as well. So if you see on the example, we provide one for each one, and then break it down into this group discussion where they have to pursue the other students to come in and be part of the group as well. So if you notice, again, all of this ones at the end for Q triple essay are just assuring back to it. And if you also notice on the book, it goes at the end of the chapter, the session, it also goes back to Q triple essay, how effective it is. And this one's activities that we added towards the end are also part of it, but are more towards how do we do once they have the Q triple essay in place. And where do we go with that? The other more advanced, or not necessarily more advanced, but the all your higher levels of newcomers, level 1, 2, 3, 4, or the other science, social studies, the context class that is more complex for them to understand. So I feel like these are more of a scaffolding ideas that teachers can break down when they feel like I'm not going to be able to modify for students. These activities are things that they are already doing for those ELL students, for all their students, not just ELL students. And just making sure that we do it is going to be more of an effective classroom and more of a welcoming environment for those ELL students in general.
Guadalupe. I'm gonna skip inside out. So I think I think we should go back. We never do this, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna hijack what we're doing. Everybody close your eyes so you don't get seasick. Here we go. I'm going all the way back to the beginning here. Oh gosh.
Well, the last one, it was the inside and outside circle, which everybody knows about it
Here,
too.
this is what I want. I want you to think about what we talked about today. I want you to try to complete our sentence. So, our exit ticket. My next step to implementing language rich strategies is. So, maybe you want to say structured conversations. Maybe you want to say using more sentence starters. Maybe you want to be putting more academic targeted vocabulary into your sentence frames. Maybe you want to try out some of the novice expert strategy, or you want to do the, what was that last one called? I don't remember, but, or just having students taking different perspectives. Um, so I'm going to let you, as your exit ticket, if you would humor us by putting in the chat at least. My next step to implementing language rich strategies is blank. Awesome. I'll try to read them out. Jessica said she's going to try to have more using the different perspectives. Like it. I feel like Jacamara was there, but then it disappeared.
No, she
Oh,
said,
here we go. I jumped. All right. Using
sentence.
more academic language in her sentence stems. Kohler says be more consistent with sentence stems outside of math instruction. Love that. Uh, cool. Collins is saying, oh,
Here, I can vocabulary. Mhm.
okay, great. Miss Wallace says more time for structured conversations. Um, create their own, having advanced EL students how to create their own sentence stems and share them using in class discussions. Great, Rhea. Fleming, use these strategies in classrooms and having them share with other staff. Love that. More conscious of when Leah and Nicole are using those and having them share with other staff members. Love that. Yeah, like again, like this stuff is going to boost language production, right? So it's going to really make sure language development is happening in your class. It's going to prompt kids to use more language in class. But even if you had no English learners in your classroom, this is great practice to be doing. All right, using QSSA. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for participating today. If you haven't signed up for a class visit in a while, sign up for a class visit, and we'll see you next month.
Let us know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jacamara. Thanks, Garricky. Olay liked the early childhood T chart. Tammy, I'm gonna go ahead and take off.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye, guys. Good job, Guadalupe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck with your son. Hope
Yeah, I hope your
everything
son
works
feels
out.
better.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.